Welcome to episode 2 of the Gridiron Aficionado, an episode where we come here to answer the questions when you're sitting watching football and you think to yourself, I wonder what's going on right there. We're hopefully going to be able to give you answers to those questions. I am your host, Ace. Joining me is my wonderful co-host, Manny Matsakis, who has years and years of college football, professional football experience, and just is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to it. I'm just a talking head while he is the aficionado. So, Manny, how you doing today?
Oh, Ace, I'm having a wonderful day and excited to sit down and visit with you.
Heck yeah, coach. I'm very excited. Right now, we're still at the beginning of the show, so I wanted to get topics that like a lot of people are talking about. We're not deep into the show where we have to get real creative with things yet. I wanted to just talk about things that people talk about a lot right now. And one of those things is going to be recruiting, NIL, and the transfer portal. And just like the first episode, I thought we could start off with a video and then you just give your initial reaction to said video.
Perfect.
All right, let's jump into it.
Elaborate
what
on
I
what
said
you.
was if they professionalize college athletics,
Yeah.
it doesn't become scholastic anymore.
Okay.
And that's because I'm passionate about education. That's what I said.
Yeah.
People have taken and they write over. I have no problem with these guys. There's basically their rev share, the scholarship being enhanced, all those things. And it's never made sense to me that a kid can't go do his own camp or stuff like that. I worked all through college.
Yeah.
I was cleaning gutters, cutting grass. I probably wasn't supposed to, but I wouldn't have made it. I was
Yep.
umpiring. There was never a time that I wasn't working. What I know is we have a responsibility to educate our young people. 98% of college players do not play in the NFL. Football is not a game of longevity, all right? And we have to emphasize and incentivize education. People make up their own stuff and it's say whatever they want. But these are people that don't know me. They don't know our program. Judge me by the fruit of this program and the kids that have come through here and the graduates and the lives that have been changed. So we've lived out our purpose. My main thing about college football is, we have to keep it scholastic. We have to.
Yeah.
We have to keep it scholastic.
You think about what's going on in Dabo's mind, and I really understand where he's coming from with his perspective. He was a guy who was a walk-on at Alabama, worked his way up as a scholarship player, and did a fantastic job taking over at Clemson and was all about developing these players. And so they'd have life after football. And that's, hate to say it, it's a bit of an old school mentality, but it is so on point. I know a lot of coaches today feel the same way. I know Dabo's background is such that he should feel that way. As I look at that, and I am, let's say, a coach, a parent, an athlete out there, and I'm watching this, what you're really seeing is a guy that's really passionate and wants to help kids. And that's just his way of doing it right now. He's not saying anything like, hey, they shouldn't be paid. Because like you mentioned, he was working his way through college himself. And I think he's all about the players. Everybody I've ever spoken to that has played for him, coached with him, they love Dabo. Dabo is just a really good guy. And he has concerns. And that's what I saw in that. And it's really as simple as like, oh, he's against guys getting paid. He's absolutely not. I think what happened there was a soundbite, which many times things get sensationalized, Ace, and they took one piece of what he said and blew it up and made him the bad guy. And he's one of the better guys in the business.
No, I absolutely agree. I've always thought while Dabo may do some things that I don't love and I've never been a Clemson fan, like I always think that he has the best intentions for his players. There was a graph that I saw at one point where Clemson, like by far and away, graduates the most football players of any program. And when he says, judge me by the fruits of what my program is creating, like he really is creating stand-up gentlemen. Whereas nowadays with NIL, the transfer portal, trying to get players in for a season, win the championship that year, win now mentality, the growth of the player as a person is just not at the forefront anymore. And I get it. It is kind of an old school mentality.
It is. And we'll talk more about this at some point. I'm sure there's some potential solutions there down the road, but you're right. Right now, it is the wild, wild west. And he's sitting there and he's like an old school sheriff, just trying to keep things in order. So go figure. It's
I
that
agree. Well, speaking of keeping things in order, let's move on to our next segment, which is going to be Been There, Coached That. This segment is just as it sounds. I'm going to ask you some questions and you're going to give me answers because you have been there and coached that.
Let's
How's
roll.
that sound, Manny?
Sounds fantastic.
Perfect. All right. So the first question that I had, let me get over to it. Oh, here we go. So when you were coaching college football, what was the strategy for recruiting a player? Like when you were going to a kid's house, you were walking in there, what was your go-to pitch before NIL existed?
Well, the go-to pitch, a lot of it depended, Ace, on where I was coaching, right? So I learned different things with Bill Snyder at Kansas State than I did with Mike Leach at Texas Tech, and even just the way we would approach the recruiting process. And I think in both cases, and in most cases, it's all about getting as much great background information on the young man you're recruiting, getting to know the people in his inner circle. Before you ever do the home visit with the head coach, you've got to put yourself in a position to really educate the head coach. So when he walks in, he may know, hey, here's mom and dad, but grandma is the one that's going to help make that decision, or his
Mhm.
uncle or somebody else, his coach could be involved. So knowing the dynamics of each situation was always important. And all the best staffs I've been on really understood just the communication channels. We made sure that we spoke to people before we ever got in the home of the player that were going to be important. So we always knew who was going to be there. Rarely were we like, oh, surprise, somebody showed up we didn't expect. And I think that's probably the key moving forward. Now, there are some strategies out there. There's old school Barry Switzer strategies that are bootlegger's boy type stuff that he did, that some great stories that I've heard from some friends of mine that work with him. But I think all in all, it's like having a really good understanding of the background, the communication channels, and who the influencers were on that player that you really wanted.
I love that you brought up that you have to figure out their inner circle. It reminds me of like Michael Jordan when Nike was coming to him to try and get what is now one of the craziest brand deals of all time. Tried to talk to him, but who they had to talk to was his mom.
No,
His mom made the
that's it.
decisions. Like he literally wouldn't make decisions without her. And knowing about the player's background, things like that, it also reminded me of a clip I saw of Ed Ordron when he was talking about when he was at USC, he went to recruit Adrian Peterson, which funny
Oh,
enough is right behind me over here. Adrian
okay.
Peterson, one of my all-time favorites as a Viking fan. And he said that he had Adrian Peterson, he was going to come to USC, but Adrian said, I think I'm going to go to Oklahoma because my dad is in prison in Oklahoma
Yes.
and I want him to be able to see my games on TV. And Ed Ordron went and tried to get his dad transferred to prisons in California near USC because you have to understand what the player wants, right?
That's right. That's a
Crazy.
great point. And Ed's one of the best recruiters that I've heard. He's rather legendary in his exploits. So it doesn't surprise me whatsoever. Yeah.
Man, he said he talked to like the mayor of the city trying to get Adrian Peterson's dad transferred. I was like, that
That's
is
crazy.
crazy.
Amazing.
But question number 2, what is actually happening in the offseason with coaches and players moving around? You know, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, they get offered head coaching jobs or
Yeah.
same job, lateral move, but to a bigger college. Players are transferring to another college. What's happening? How much communication is actually happening behind the scenes? And how much does a head coach actually have to do with that process?
Well, he has a lot to do with the process when you think about the head coach, but I think ultimately the dynamics of what's happening today are very different than they were 10, 15 years ago. Today, these coaches, these assistant coaches and coordinators, they have agents. They actually work the back channels, right? And you even see words now that didn't exist 10, 20 years ago, like, oh, he's the GM of a college football
Yeah.
program, or he's a chief of staff. You hear these NFL names, titles, and so forth, and
Mhm.
and that's what you're noticing. But the difference is there, as opposed to the National Football League. There's no tampering in the NFL. You cannot talk to a coach if he's in the middle of a playoff run. It
Yeah.
just can't. So the agents are literally the gatekeepers, Ace. So that's what's happening. But I will tell you, the best coaches I know, the way they navigate this, and it's really what happened before and even now in the advent of agents, is they're the most important coach on the staff when you're dealing with one semester to the next, right? The season's over, you're playing deep into the playoffs. The most important coach is your strength coach. So that's
Really?
the guy. Oh, yeah. He's the one that keeps it all together. So that's why you want to make sure you, as a head coach, you're communicating to that strength coach, because there's no coach on the whole staff other than the head coach that spends as much time and is in the players' heads as the strength coach, just by NCAA rules. He can be with them more than any coach. So he's training him, he's doing that. So he will understand the dynamic of what's going on with the team. He is to report to the head coach. And the closer that tie in is between the strength coach and the head coach, now that's the glue that keeps a program together if a guy goes to one place or the other.
That kind of blew my mind. I didn't think that.
Yeah.
I would not
So,
have guessed that you were going to bring up the strength coach as the
oh, yeah.
glue, like as the
Critical.
dang.
Critical.
That's actually really cool because a lot of people, they think the strength and conditioning coach, they think it's a big beefy dude. And then
Uh,
in the NFL and college, a lot of times because they aren't necessarily a play caller, they're the one that pulls the head
oh,
coach back, right? There's
nah,
like the
yeah, you
famous,
see that dude with the
yeah,
mustache. And he's
yeah, yeah. There's like the
yeah.
famous videos of Sean McVay because he's not a big dude. The
Yeah.
strength and conditioning coach like whips him around. But
Yeah, Brent Venables used to have a guy, Clemson,
mhm,
used to grab him all, it was like by the belt. No, I get it, but that's the thing, is the strength coach is the glue. And just by rule, nobody can work with players as
mhm.
many hours as that guy. So he knows them, he's in their head. And I know that's a big thing. That's why you'll notice when a head coach goes and takes a new job,
Mhm.
he's going to bring his strength
He brings
coach.
his strength coach.
Yeah.
That
And
that is
that's
something that
critical.
probably most people watching would not have thought that because I've been around football for a while now, talking to coaches like you and players, and this is the first I've even considered that. So
Yeah.
look at that. That's an aficionado
Yeah.
soundbite right there. Like that was cool
Let's go.
information.
I
But
love
for my third and last question for been there, coach that, it is what was your favorite philosophy you saw from another coach when it came to recruiting players?
Man, and I'll tell you right where it came from. At Texas Tech, Mike Leach,
I knew it was
brilliant.
Mike Leach. Knew
The things that he would come up with in his mind in the recruiting process, it what usually, like, what happens is the head coach goes in to the home, right?
Mhm,
And he's sort of maybe with one or two coaches and all this. We would do something that I started doing immediately after I left Mike and I was the head coach at Texas State. And I gave it a name. Mike never had a name for it, but because I was in Texas, I used to call it posse recruiting. And posse recruiting is like, you want a player? It's not just the head coach. We would like bring we pretty much the whole staff would be coming into this kid's house. And it helped because we had a dynamic with so many different people. You'd have Ruffin McNeil, you'd have Art Briles, you'd have Sonny Dykes, Dana Holgerson, all these different guys that just had different personalities, but they were all engaging. And one could talk to the grandma, the other one could talk to the little brother and play with him. And when we left, it was like the posse had just come. It was like that kid knew that it was a family atmosphere, because in the end, recruiting, you have to make sure that the family and the mother, the grandmother, that side of it understands that it is a family atmosphere. They're about to give you their son, and you are the de facto parent while he is going to your school. So they have to be very comfortable with you. So I thought that was important. And even the way we would dress going into homes, it'd be
mhm,
different from one to the other. You just had to match, mirror, and assimilate that family, but you had to be real while you
and
had to be yourself. Right. So
respectful
yeah,
about it. Yeah.
no question. Yeah, no doubt.
I think it's very interesting that you brought up specifically the family aspect. So I was actually talking to Stan Bedwell today
Sure.
because he's the head coach of the Toros, the team that I'm a part of.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how you will never hear him say that, the family stuff,
Oh,
because we're a professional football team. And I think
mm,
that's one of the biggest differences between college and professional football that now is kind of that's where this was the gap between college and
sure.
NFL, and now that gap is bridging and they're becoming one because college, it's basically professional players playing for colleges. And he said, I'm not going to say it's like a family. He's like, because it's not, it's business. He's like, and I'm not going to, I might have to cut you. I might have to cut you. I might have to tell you something real serious because this is business and there's money involved. And I was like, that's
And that's
kind of
the
cool.
philosophy. I can see where he's coming from, right?
Yeah.
And I know Stan, well, he worked for me, and
Yeah.
a lot of it when I hear a coach, any coach, we're talking about Stan, I think about what their references are, like where have they been, what brought them to say whatever it is they
To
say,
get to
Ace, like
that
what you
point of
heard.
philosophy.
Yeah, think about it. You're talking about in his case, he's a really good football coach, and but his path is as a journeyman. He has been to probably 17 different programs
Yeah.
professionally, Europe, all over the place, playing everywhere and everywhere. And so you get that vision.
Leadership mentality.
Yeah, you don't get a family atmosphere. There's no, but there are professional programs where guys come in and they feel that. I would say a great one, what Vrabel has been doing with the New England Patriots. Those guys love him. They feel a family atmosphere. Of course, they're getting paid. That's a de facto just statement. Of course, they are. But what they feel in the house is a family atmosphere. And even though it's professional, I think you still want that because there are times where players are going to make a decision later to leave as a free agent or stay.
Yeah.
And I think when you come to the core of them, their heart, they will stay if they, unless the money is ridiculous and they can't match it, something like that.
That's fair. And we talked about with the Lions and Dan Campbell, and he is also the same kind of way because we got to see it on
Mhm.
Hard Knocks. People who watch Hard Knocks, at one point, he's almost to the verge of tears, yelling, losing his voice. Like, I think about you guys every single day. It's all I think about. And
Amen
my
to them.
my best friend who played college football, he texted me. He was like, "Yeah, I would run through a wall for Dan Campbell." And he was just
No
watching him
question.
on TV because you could feel that family that I actually care about you more than football aspect. Yes. But it is a very interesting thing to think about a coach's philosophy and what experience was as a player and how that got them to this philosophy as a coach. Uh,
Absolutely.
because that makes sense when I'm thinking about Stan, and hopefully he isn't upset that I brought that up.
Not oh shoot, man. Hey, that's what I love about this as a serious fan of this sport and just some, as people that love it like us, there's so many dynamics to it, right, Ace? I mean,
Yeah.
you look at it and and that's why I love that we can bring so many people in the future onto the show as guests. We're going to learn a lot together. That's probably going to be my favorite part of all this.
Oh, when you truly love something, it's not like learning algebra back in school. It's not a chore, it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that is something that I'm very much looking forward to on this show is that I love football. I literally had a friend today that I was talking to. I was like, "We both love football." He said, "I don't love football the way you love football." I said, "Nobody loves football the way I love football, man, because I
Yeah.
love learning about it."
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
let's learn a little more, shall we? Let's
Sure.
go into segment 3, which is the state of the game.
Mm.
This, I said it last episode, this is where we zoom out. We go from the micro to the macro. And instead of talking about individual experiences that you have with the recruiting, with the transfer portal, I want to talk about how it looks as a whole to you, coach. So, my question is, what is your opinion as a former college coach on what NIL has done to football? What do you like? What do you not like?
Well, I'll tell you, when you think about NIL, name, image, and likeness,
Mm.
it is at the very beginning, I think, okay, people say, okay, they'll get something, they'll make a few, they'll be able to handle themselves. And then it just starts to blow up financially. Agents get involved, backroom deals are set up and all that. But the positive side, when you start looking at the way the playoffs have been going, for instance, so you start looking at these teams that come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, until there are guardrails put on this, the schools that have the most money, the smartest coaches and money are the ones that are going to rise that maybe weren't the original blue bloods of the game. I think, and it makes a lot of fun when you're starting to see the Indianas of the world coming back and doing things. You see Ole Miss making a run and all these other teams that like, this is amazing because before it was almost like, I hate to say it because I love football. It was almost boring. Oh, Alabama's going to be there every year. Okay, Ohio State's going to be, and all of a sudden, everything flipped,
Mhm.
right? Because now these schools can come in and compete financially for any player they want. Now, I believe that there is a, well, how can I say this? There is a certain way you can put it all together that
Okay.
differentiates you from others. And it's not about who has the most money,
Mhm.
because some of these programs that have the most money don't always get to the championship or even to the Final Four. So the what I would say is, and what I've learned through the process is, it's got to be a bit of a hybrid situation. Now, in the old days, and it's not that long ago, 20, 30 years ago, the big thing that colleges were doing is they were really investing in facilities. It was all about facilities, who had the best facility and all this kind of stuff, because you couldn't pay the players, right? That was what it was. Now, at least legally, now we know, as SEC's been paying
I don't know
players
what you're
before
talking
he was
about.
born. We know that. That's just the given. But what I'm noticing right now is the edge is number one for a coach being smart in how you spend the NIL monies. Even if you're thinking you have unlimited budget, there's a dynamic of what you're giving players and how it fits within the infrastructure of your team. So you have to
Mhm.
have cohesion and culture in the locker room. So you got
Yeah.
to be smart about how you're spreading it out and what players you have to get and fill the gaps in your team. But the other piece is that I thought was intriguing when I did a deep dive into the Indiana Hoosiers. What they did, they started off with facilities, and you don't hear that very much anymore. You just don't.
Not really.
Yeah. So they spent a boatload of money to get the cutting edge, state of the art facility, always keeping it up to date because they knew the coach that they brought in, Kurt Signetti, was a developer of young men. Even if he was going to bring him in, I've only got you for a year, 6 months, whenever they got him in the portal. His thing was, what can I do to develop them mind, body, spirit with the best training, the best facilities, the best food at the training table, all that stuff, all the pieces of that, they invested in that first. And then when these guys would come in, he'd sign certain players that always had a bit of a chip on their shoulder, right?
Mhm.
And now they had the mentality, but they walked in and they've never had that kind of support. And that's why a team like Indiana became scarier and scarier as the season would go on, during 2025.
Mhm.
So that's basically what I'm noticing. But I think NIL has been the great equalizer, and it's giving a lot more parity. And as we're watching college football, have you ever seen so many really great close games, like almost like the NFL?
Mhm.
Yeah, these teams can compete now.
I agree, and you see the teams, and I like that you pointed out that there still is a culture aspect to it
Absolutely.
because you have a team that basically came out and said that they have unlimited money in Texas Tech, right?
Yeah.
They have unlimited money. They got
But they
knocked
don't
out.
pay the most. That's what's
No, they
funny. They're
don't
not.
pay the most. They don't, but they know they
Oh,
can.
yeah.
And the
They,
fact that they had a $28 million roster in 2025 got
yeah.
bounced and shut out. because when it came down to it and they actually were playing to where you have to be able to scheme fully, you can't just use your talent and bully people. They didn't look near as cohesive. And then you look at the Indianas, you look at the Ole Misses, where they do have a culture and they are able to compete against maybe even better talent because
Quite
they are
possibly.
cohesive. They're working more together as a team,
Oh,
which is cool.
agree.
And I love that you're bringing up the parity because, yeah, it really is the fact
It's
that we had 2 G5 schools in 2025 getting into the playoffs was pretty wild.
yeah,
And I love
fantastic.
seeing that. And I love seeing Notre Dame not in. So that's just me.
I
I'm one of them.
understand. Yeah, there's a lot of sentiments with that, but in the end, we 25 was a great season. I think it's all been wonderful, and that's why we're here. That's the
Mhm,
college side of the game for sure.
mhm. Well, my second question to tie back, I asked you what you thought of it. And then now it's what would you change about this new NIL and transfer portal era? What would you change, like that you think could be better or that you
Sure.
think is not as good as it should be?
Well, I believe there should be a commissioner of football at that highest level, whatever it is. If you would
Okay.
combine the different levels, the group of five, six now, and the power five, however we call that, if you want to combine it, that's fine. It doesn't matter to me. I think they're all can be good because, in essence, one thing is how do you know that there isn't somebody that is a donor out there, like a multi-billionaire at a school that is not one of the big boys, so to speak? Like a James Madison. There's a guy, you get one guy like a Mark Cuban, what he could do at Indiana is off the
Mhm,
charts, right? So you don't know that. So those schools, if you get the right person involved, they could flip it, right?
mm,
So the changes I would see that I believe should come in is look at the National Football League. All right. What we want out of all this is certainly parity and as much equality as possible. So all I'm saying is whatever the amount is that you want to be able to put out there, there needs to be guardrails on it. Right? Because even in the NFL, they have salary caps for a team, right? You can't just go buy anybody you want and spend crazy money that isn't within the National Football League salary cap. I think we can learn from the most stable professional league in the world, which is the National Football League.
mm,
They all win. They all make a lot of money, these owners, right? So I think you want to have guardrails put together that say, all right, here is your salary cap to play Division 1 college football. However you do it, that's what it is. So everybody knows going in. Also, I think where it's gotten really out of hand is the college level has started to have so many assistant coaches, so much support staff. It's beyond the National Football League, even, right?
mhm,
So I think you need to say, all right, what can you have in your structure to play to be Division 1? So I think in every aspect of this, Ace, I think there has to be, without a shadow of a doubt, a way to be very transparent about the finances, about the hiring processes. And I do believe that one nice thing is there used to be 2 windows in the transfer portal before
mhm.
2025. Now there's one. And you saw a sense of urgency in it. Now the calendar, it's screwed up. Right? They're not realizing when portal opens up and these kids are still playing in the playoffs. Makes no sense. All
Yeah.
right. So I think that and ultimately in 2025, that Lane Kiffin situation where coaches are getting hired before their season is over, I think that should also switch. That should switch to the NFL model. You should not be able to leave your program until your very last game. You cannot announce that you're going somewhere else, and they can officially talk to you and break it that you are leaving Ole Miss to go to LSU, for instance. That should not have happened. In the NFL, it can't happen. So I think the National Football League is the guidepost that we can build college football to get to the level where it's truly making sense and people have a high quality of life when we do that.
I agree. There was during the playoffs, there was I don't know, a viral clip that happened where Carson Beck, a reporter, asked, "What is it like preparing for the playoffs when you have class tomorrow?" And he
Oh,
said, "I graduated 2 years ago. There's no class." And so
yeah,
that made me realize this really is professional players playing for a college.
yeah.
And so I agree with everything that you're saying. There needs to be a salary cap. There needs to be more guidelines. The transfer
Mhm.
portal and all of that situation needs to
Yeah,
be fixed. The schedule specifically, like you said. So I agree with that. I agree that it's not necessarily college football anymore, and they need to start looking at it as the professional angle so
yeah,
that it can kind of balance back out and things can calm down because right now it's just kind of going crazy. It's amusing to watch though. It is
yeah.
very
It
fun
is
to watch.
interesting. But I think it's going in that direction, Ace, and I think the playoffs are we're gonna have more teams. We'll have 16 before you know it.
I would love.
Well, and the thing I notice is the teams that get a bye are actually at a disadvantage because
Yep.
they're off for so long. And it's sort of like back when I was coaching and it was the bowl games were it, right? So the longer time you had off, you had to really learn how to manage that, right? So that's always been a tough deal. And that's what those 4 teams that got the bye, how they think, oh, they'll be, they don't need a month, 28 days is
Yeah.
what a lot of them are getting between one game and the next. Give them all 2 weeks. Let's go play. And
Yeah.
then I
Give them
think you got it
a
ready to
bye
go.
week, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And you brought up a topic that eventually I might want to talk about in bowl games and the fact that that's what it used to be. And now
Yeah.
most big good players opt out of bowl games or transfer. So
Yeah.
a lot of people are saying they don't matter. I'm not saying that they don't, but I digress. That's for another episode.
Sure.
The last segment we have before we end is the aficionado angle. Manny, this is where we take recruiting as a whole
Yeah.
and from your just years of experience, what is the aficionado angle here? What is the thing that people need to take away from this episode? Which is a broad and difficult question.
Yeah. What you want to take out of this is from a college football perspective, it's ever changing, right? So I look at this and think, what's going to happen next? I would take it in this regard. We have to be dealing with a variety of issues over time. We are going to start seeing more and more structure put in. But here's the lesson I've learned about something like structure. Very simply, when you go to put order into a situation, whatever it is, you put order in there. The first thing that shows up, I would call it disorder. People get upset. They get, oh, you're changing this. You're changing what has become the status quo in that moment. So you're going to get a lot of flack for making the changes that want to get you to the vision that needs to be happening down the road. So expect a lot of that. Expect the social media, expect the noise, expect the craziness that's going to go with that. But what's needed is a leader that can go out, put order in, ignore the disorder, the chaos that's out there, continue to do it, and keep taking steps to where the greatest game that we love on the planet, which is football, and we're talking about the collegiate game right now, that we take it to unforeseen heights. The sky's the limit. There's no doubt in my mind it's going to happen, but it's going to take great leadership to make that happen and somebody that can handle the noise and keep putting in order.
Look at that. I kind of put you on the spot there with the aficionado angle and you knocked it out of the park, Manny.
Oh,
That
man.
was a good one. I like that. Bringing or getting through the disorder to bring the disorder that comes when trying to establish order. I think that's great. And with that, Manny, that is all we had to talk about today. I think just for the episode, I think we are already getting to the point where your mind is starting to open up and we're seeing some really cool things. There's some things on this episode we talked about that I thought was pretty great. That's why we are the Gridiron Aficionado. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe so that you can join our conversation whenever we have it on a weekly basis. Hopefully, we were able to cut through the noise tonight, show you some cool things behind the scenes of football that maybe you didn't think about, that hopefully will give you a better perspective when you're watching these things down the road. Manny, what do you have to say to the nice fans out there?
Well, I want to thank you personally, the serious fan, the ones that care about this, right? That you tuned into this, you're watching it, and it gives us the opportunity to share a lot of wonderful stories, ways of doing things that get you in a position to actually pull back the curtain on football, the game of the game that we love. And I love it. Ace, I know you love it, and we love it. We love you guys out there, anybody out there that's paying attention to us.
Yes, we do. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure that you go to the website, gridironaficionado.com, and make sure that you sign up for the newsletter so that when the magazine comes out, you get the awesome, ginormous Gridiron Aficionado
Right.
magazine that you can put on your coffee table, take up half your coffee table, make all your friends jealous when they come over to have a bourbon with you. So we're very excited about that. A lot of things to come, a lot of big names to come on the show. It's only going to go up from here. So thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time.